this is Danny from Focable Trades. We're here today to talk about making produce bags for your fruit and your veggies and nuts and seeds and things. But while we're waiting for people to arrive, I just want to point out some other zero waste things we have in our house. So also about shopping with less plastic. So over here we have our spices rack. We buy our spices in really big bags and then put them into these jars. We don't fill these jars up from the bulk food stores, because actually the jars I have in the bulk food stores of spices are about the same size as this, so we'd just be decanting the whole jar. So we sort of do what those bulk food stores do, is we buy them really big bags of spices, put them into these jars, and then our friends and family can come and fill up their tiny spice jars. Sam's also notorious for using lots of spices, so we need quite a lot. So that's what we do to try and reduce at least small amounts of plastic here. You can also see we have our shelf of jars, which you've probably seen in a few of our other videos. So some of those we do fill up from bulk food stores. So we take the bags, which we're going to make today, and we fill them at the bulk food stores with things like linseed. We'd fill up the bag, and then when we get home we pour that into the jar for some things. But some things we buy in such big sizes, again, we do sort of what the bulk food stores do, and we buy really big bags like this, big self-raising flour, or we get our lentils and some of our chickpeas and our rice in these big paper bags. So that's another way we sort of do more zero waste at home. So now a few people have probably arrived though. We'll get into talking about the produce bag. So we'll head over to where the sewing machine is and start there. So we're here to talk about produce bags, but I want to start by thanking our partners. So that's Cities of Mitcham, and also supported by Marion Holdfast-Bain on Coringa, as well as the Adelaide Mount Lofty Ranges Natural Resource Management Board. Thank you for helping support all these videos so we can offer them to the community for free. So I also want to start by saying Naumani and acknowledging I'm here on Kaurna land. And last week was Reconciliation Week, so hopefully you were able to be involved. It's not been as easy this year with restrictions of being home, but one way you could be involved is by watching films and reading books by Aboriginal artists, so it's another way to get engaged. But we're here to talk about produce bags, and I'd like to know, in terms of produce bags, where you get some of your bulk food from. So I'd love some tips and tricks from all of you about where you are. So if you've got any good stores or locations that you can get bulk food, please chuck them in the comments under the video. So maybe saying, Source Bulk Food Store, there's a good one. And I think they're in Mitcham. There's one in Glenelg, but I'm not sure where the other ones are. So yeah, if you could put in comments where you get things, that would be great. So we're going to talk about the produce bags, which are basically a drawstring bag today. So it's these sort of fabric bags. I'll talk about why I make them from fabric, what the benefits are, and I'll show how to make them in these big sort of cardboard cutouts, but then sew one up on the machine quickly as well, so you can see both levels. That comments box I was just mentioning is a great place for you to put any questions as we go, or just any other comments and ideas. And in there, I'd love to know if anyone is a complete beginner with sewing machines. So please, let me know in there. I might ask that again. So what are we making? Why are we making it? And how are we making it? Well, what are we making? Are these produce bags? So you can use these. These are your fruit and veggies and things at the supermarket or market. Obviously, you can use them there. But you can also use them for much smaller things like your bulk food, rice and lentils and everything else. So that's what we're making. Why we're making it? There's a few reasons. One of them, the main one, is to reduce our plastic, single-use plastic in particular. So when you go to get things from the store, you often get them in those really thin plastic bags. I couldn't find one in the house. They do seem to find their way in somehow. So they're obviously what we're trying to avoid. Now you may have seen in some of the stores things like these compostable bags. So they really are compostable, which means they're made from plant material, which is good. You can basically ignore the term biodegradable. If you see it anywhere, we're looking for the word compostable. So that's made from cornstarch. These are great and a big improvement on single-use plastic bags, because they can go in your green council bin, but also maybe even in your home compost. They just take a bit longer to break down. But they are still single or 2 or 3 times use. So in the long term, it's better to have a reusable option indefinitely, because there were still resources and things and energy that went into making this. So they're good, but in my opinion, the best alternative is to have something completely reusable. That being said, there's still resources in this, and depending on if it's organic cotton or not or whatever else, it could be more or less resources. So we do want to be mindful of the materials we have. Another reason to have these sorts of bags is being not made from plastic means that they are natural fibres. So if you had rice in here or something and a tiny little fibre came off that you couldn't even see and was in with your rice and you accidentally ate it, it's a really small amount of a natural fibre that's going through your system. So I don't tend to worry about that as much. If you're really interested in microfibres, microplastics, then have a look at the story of microfibres by the Story of Stuff series. So it's a great series, and it talks about how in the oceans most of the microplastics are not from those beads in the face wash, they're actually from clothes we wash in our laundry machine. So I get a bit obsessive, as some might say, about natural fibres. So this we're going to make is 100% natural on the fabric, but also the threads and the string. So I'll talk about where I get those as well. A few other quick reasons why they make lovely gifts. They're lovely little, particularly if you make a trio and put them in another small bag, it's a lovely gift to give to a friend. And they're really simple sewing projects. So if you're an advanced sewer, they're going to be great because you can just smash them out. But if you're a beginner sewer, they're really easy. Don't worry, this is about all I make. I don't do clothes or anything. So I'm going to show how to make them. Remember to pop in any questions, but hopefully we'll cover them as we go. Sam will ask me questions at the end or a convenient time. So to make your produce bag, or your drawstring bag, I try and get something that's about this ratio, a long skinny rectangle, rather than, you could do it from 2 squares, but a long skinny rectangle, because you're going to end up folding it over, and that's going to be roughly the size of your bag. So in the fabric version, that's my long skinny rectangle-ish, and when we fold it, that's going to be about the size of my bag. So that gives you a guide. So get your long skinny rectangle, and if it's got a pattern on it that you want to be able to see on the outside of your bag, you're actually going to be putting that away from you. So if there's a nice pattern on it, you put that away. So the first step in making our produce bag is to fold over with the pattern. You can't see the pattern, you're looking at mostly the inside. You're folding over the tube, and that's where the string sits. And that's where, you have the tube for your string, so you need that part. That's the first bit. This is probably one of the simplest drawstring bag methods. It's only 2 lines of sewing, so it's very simple, machine or hand. So you fold it over, and how much you fold it depends maybe on how big your safety pin is, because that's going to have to fit through the tube. It also depends how confident you are. If you're a beginner, do a really big tube, so then if your sewing line is really wiggly, it doesn't matter. You've got a leniency, you've got some room. But if you're more confident, you can make it a bit smaller. So fold it over and sew it along, which we'll do on the machine in a minute. So that's kind of step 1, super simple. Then we're going to fold it, so it's still inside out. We're seeing the inside of the fabric here, and we've got our tube, and we're going to sew an L. I'm counting that as 1 line of sewing. Someone said I might be cheating, and it's technically 3, but I figure it's 1. So you've done your tube. Now this is a real key bit, so please listen to this. When you sew your L, which is this stitch line, start below the tube. Otherwise, if you sew across there, you're going to sew your tube up, and you're not going to be able to get a drawstring through it. So starting below your tube, and you're going to go around. Some of you may know the sewing hack on a machine to turn a nice corner. I'll show you that when we get there. But you're going to go down and along, and that basically is all the sewing. There's just adding the string to it. So here's one I did earlier, which, like I said, it's easy to see on the paper, that's why I showed it, but I do have a tube at the top here, and then I do have my line of sewing, which I started below the tube, and I went down, and I did an L. Now, one thing I didn't do with this was finish my edges in any way. So I don't know if you can see that, but they are fraying. So there's a few things you can do there. I probably won't be going into sewing technical things like French seams and that sort of stuff, but there are different seams you can do where you sew that fraying edge into itself, or use some good old pinking shears. So zigzag pinking shears doesn't stop the fraying entirely, but it's going to reduce it. So I use them mostly. Once you've folded it and done your sewing your L, turn it inside out, which is the best bit. I'll get to do that in a minute. You're going to add your cord on, and that's basically the drawstring bag. So now let's do one on with fabric. We'll start by showing you the fabric, and then we'll come over to the machine. So this is my fabric. So this fabric is 100% cotton. It's a lawn, as in L-A-W-N, is technically the thickness of the fabric. So it's just really lightweight and thin. It doesn't, I mean, you don't have to have something super lightweight, depending on what you're putting in it. Depends on the cost. Like if you were buying saffron by the weight, you would want the very lightest bag you could probably get. But if you're buying potatoes and other things like that, it doesn't matter. The weight of this bag, in fact, I can weigh it on my scales. I don't know if I'll be able to show you because I'm holding it. It's probably not the right way to use scales. But the bag is, oh no, it doesn't work like that. It's 15 grams. I weighed it earlier. So it's 15 grams, and with the string, it's going to be barely any more. So it's a really lightweight bag. You can use secondhand fabric, absolutely. I make a lot of mine out of old bed sheets. A great way to get secondhand natural fibered fabric is to go to the sheets section of the op shops, because they'll still have their labels. So yeah, you can hunt around for the 100% stuff. So I have done my pinking shears on this, my zigzag down 2 edges. I'm just going to do the last edge so that it will reduce the fraying. Like I said, if you want to go on YouTube and look up French seams or something, you can find how to hide your seams even better. So a good pair of pinking shears is great. I'm going to cut them like that. Just be mindful of buying left or right-handed sewing scissors. A friend of mine just went and didn't look properly and ended up with a left-handed pair, which is great if you're left-handed, but if you're right-handed, not so good. So a good pair of pinking shears is great. We get a little bit of wastage here, but because that's 100% natural, that can go in my compost and the worms will eat it. All right, so the first step, remembering, is to fold over that tube. Now this fabric actually has, I don't know if you can see, that edge is actually the sort of machine finished edge, as in, yeah, like it's folded up, so it's not going to fray, so I don't need to pinking that, and I can just fold it over. So we're going to sew it in a minute.
Someone's asked, could you sew the cord in the tube in one step?
Ooh, you could. Yeah, you absolutely could. It's just you obviously risk, depending on how confident you are, if you catch the thread even slightly on the cord, it's going to lock it in place and so it won't slide. And also it's pretty fun doing the little shooshy thing through the tube to get the cord through. But yeah, give it a go. Let me know how it goes. So we're going to come down to the machine now. I tested the machine before we started, but obviously sewing machines are notoriously tricky. Again, I'll go through this as a bit of a beginner. I don't know if any of us are complete beginners, but yeah, we'll sew it through this way. So this is the foot of the machine, and that's your needle. I've got it threaded up. I like to give myself quite a long tail so it doesn't bounce back up, but I go a bit rogue and I don't use pins or anything. So I'm going to fold my tube over. I'm a pretty confident sewer. I'm going to go about there. And then I'm going to use my foot as a guide. So see how I've lined that foot with up with roughly the edge of the fabric there, and I've put it down. So to sew this, I've just done a straight stitch, really simple, but I am going to do forwards and backwards on it. So I'm going to start by sewing. So I've got it down. I'm going to go forwards a few. And now I'm going to go backwards a few. So over here you can see the reverse button. Machines have different reverse buttons in different locations. So I have to hold that down to make it go backwards. And I'm just going to go back. So all that's done is locked in the threads where it is, so you don't have to tie them up afterwards. And now I'm going to be a bit noisy for a second, and I'm going to sew all the way along. Like I said, I haven't got any pins, but it's really easy to guide, and it's not like we're doing anything too fancy. So let me just go along. Sometimes I might stop to rearrange my fabric, get it all lined up, and keep going. At the end again, I'm going to do my backwards and forwards, just for a few. So as you saw, that was not like it was straight enough. Not super precise, doesn't have to be exact. We're just making a produce bag, fancy. So this is the bit where you fold it inside out of each other. So we're doing that fold and we're going to sew our L, remembering to start below the tube. So I'll pop it back in. I'll put it below my tube, the needle's there, so that's below. I'll line this up roughly. If your lines don't match up perfectly, that's quite all right. Don't worry, it's on the inside of a bag. I've put my foot down, I'm going to go forwards and backwards and down to the corner, and then I'll show you how I rotate. And then I'm going to go down to the corner. And did you see how I was guiding the fabric? I wasn't pushing it. The machine grabs it and pulls it. So now I'm at the corner. My needle is actually in. Now you never want to lift the foot like this when the needle's in normally because you'll never get your fabric out. You couldn't pull it. But right now I'm going to use that needle down but foot up to rotate and put it back down so it's in the perfect location for me to go along the other side. And you see I'm giving myself a bit of room because if these don't line up, one of them might be set further back than the other. And I'm going to go along to the other end. If you do it this way, it means that the fabric will line up perfectly, as in, you know, wherever it folds is where the edge is. Okay, my foot's down. At this point, I want to sew right off the edge. Otherwise, you'll have a hole in the little corner of your bag. And then I've got to lift my foot up. Remember to pull it out, otherwise it won't come. Lots of machines have these little cutters on them, so I can cut it off and finish it off a bit later. But that's all the sewing, the tube and then the L. So let's have a look at the next stage. All right. So it was my tube and then my L. That was everything. Now, obviously, one bit you're going to finish off is cutting off all the little threads. You can do that as close and fancy as you like. And these threads are all 100% cotton too. I just make my life easy so I don't have to remember what threads this and what threads that. I've found cotton threads from the op shops, but I've also bought some cotton threads from just the sort of haberdashery stores. And there are ones this style, which I think are in a cardboard tube, which is pretty cool. So I cut off my little threads. One thing I could have done, instead of putting the pinking shears on before I sewed, which means they don't line up all that well, is I can pinking shear it now. So see how badly that lines up? I mean, it doesn't really matter because it's inside the bag, but I can go along and use pinking shears now. And when I do that, so it's already been sewn, don't cut too close. It kind of looks like I matched up the fabric perfectly, but obviously didn't. I did it afterwards. So yeah, you can pinking shear after. So give it a bit of a tidy up, excuse me, and then we get to turn it inside out. If you do any projects that like sewing and pillowcases, it's great fun turning it inside out. So you turn it inside out, and the best bit of every sewing project is to poke its little corners so that they're properly done. And that's the base of your produce bag. Now, like I said, all those seams are on the inside. If you wanted to, this was the next step where you could hide that seams. You could do an external line of sewing along here, and then when you look inside, you wouldn't see all the fraying edges. Another thing you might want to do is look at the edge and see, oh, there's fraying bits or whatnot. I could just, not cutting through the sewing, but I could zigzag that off and it's a bit of a better finish. It will technically fray as I pull the cord, but it's such a small amount and it's a natural fibre, so don't worry about it. So now it's time for our cord. So I use this jute twine quite a lot. You get it from hardware stores and craft stores. It tends to be cheaper from hardware stores. And I use my safety pin. Like someone said, you could try sewing it when it's in there. It just depends how confident you are. But I just tie a very basic knot onto a safety pin. I leave it attached to my ball, and then I do this motion to go through the tube. So, and the bigger you leave your tube, the easier it is to push this through. It's a nice lightweight, easy fabric, so you shouldn't have much problem at all. And you could use a cordage you've made if you get really into basket weaving. I've been making cordage, but I haven't used it yet for a produce bag, probably because it's too thick, really. You'd have to make a nice fine one. You could use anything you have ready to make the cord. I just made this t-shirt yarn, but that's a bit thick. So yeah, I brought it through. Now once it's on the other end and still attached to this ball, some people are very tempted to go like this and then cut it way down there, but don't be, because a produce bag spends most of its life. It only needs a tiny tail because it spends its life, you know, like this. So if you have, if you have extra on that, your string is going to be really, really long. So when I bring it through, I'm going to cut it and then tie it off in a knot, basically. Yep.
Just asking where you get the drawstring from.
Drawstring, yeah. So the drawstring, I get that from actually the hardware stores. You know, the big box stores, you know the ones. So I go to Mitre 10 or Bunnings or something if need be to get that. It tends to be cheaper there than in craft stores. It's like it's a premium in a craft store. But otherwise, it's anything I can find. And that cotton, it's like a cotton string that people use, I think, for cooking, as in maybe I think my nan used to tie up lamb with it or something. You can use that as well because that's all cotton. Once you've got your little tails, I just do a very simple, I don't know what that knot's called, a granny knot or something. I just do a knot. Any knot's going to do, it doesn't really matter. But towards the end, so that when it's open, it's pretty open. Actually, I could have put that knot a bit further because it's a bit runkled there. But like I said, you've just got to be able to get things in and then do your string. Now my little tip on this, when you are going to the store and buying things like your potatoes or your apples, is to pull it down and then you can leave it like that. If it's stuff that doesn't matter if it falls out so much, so it's going to be fine in your bag. But I do this once, you can see this, once wrapped around and then pull it through, just the once, and it gives this nice little knot. And they're lovely. We use them so much, we use them everywhere. We have, they're very addictive to make. You can hand sew that as well. You saw how it was a few straight lines. You can absolutely hand sew these if you don't have a machine. However, sewing machines are one of those things that a lot of people have kicking around. So if you ask your family and friends if you don't have one, I bet you can borrow one. So once you've got some, make some sets. I got a bit addicted. I think I made seriously about 30 produce bags. Gave some away, but also kept a whole heap in the house and in the car. So you can also make yourself, this is a drawstring bag. These are drawstring bags within drawstring bags. So this is a stuff bag where I keep all of my produce bags stuffed into one. Stuffed into one that you can carry it around. So I'd recommend trios as gifts. They're a lovely, lovely little gift. Please remember to pop in any comments or questions if you have any about this. It's a pretty simple process, but it's a lovely, lovely little simple craft project that you can use old fabric or anything. I really like making them. Yes.
Someone's asked if the bulk food stores or greengrocers complain that the bags aren't see-through.
No, I've never had that anywhere. If anything, I get compliments all the time. I get people saying, "Oh, these are so lovely, where did you get them?" And then when you say you made them, people are like, "Oh my gosh, you made them!" And I think, oh, they're not that tricky to make. But yeah, I know. If anything, I get compliments. I did start writing. I haven't got it in here. I just got permanent marker, and in some of them I wrote the weight because I made some really thick, heavy ones for, I think it was for potatoes. So I thought, oh, I'll write the weight, and so they can take that off as well. One of the reasons that something I did say I'd get to but didn't is I don't use old net curtains, and that's and lots of people do for produce bags, and if that's your groove, that's fine, but they are generally acrylic or polyester, so they're plastic. So as you're sewing it, little bits of plastic go everywhere, and as you're using it, little bits of plastic go everywhere. So it's just not my thing, but that's something you could use. Yeah.
What measurements would you say that pattern is?
Ooh. Good point. I'll put them as a comment below this. I've got a ruler right here, I think. Yeah, I'll put the, I can put the measurements below, but it looks like it's a sort of almost 30 by 30. Yeah, it's pretty much a ruler by a ruler. It would be 30 by 30, well, so it'd actually be 60 by 30, if that makes sense. Oh, I've already sewn up another one, because it's longer and skinny. So you're going to have 60 by 30, and then the seams will make it a bit smaller.
This is just a question from me. Don't you normally work out what the full width of your bolt or sheet is and then divide it up?
Yes, I try and use fabric as efficiently as possible. So sometimes there's wiggle room in that, and sometimes I cut them, that way on the fabric. Sometimes I cut them that way. But yeah, absolutely, you can tweak that. I think I was doing 75 by 35 for quite a while. 75 by, because fabric came in 150 wide. So 75 plus 75 was 150. So yeah, just go with what you can get the max out If there's any more questions, I will absolutely write some replies and put some information below. But this, in a week, 2 weeks today, we have a general zero waste shopping session. So we're going to be looking more at other ways to reduce our plastic when we're shopping, thanks to Mitcham and some of the other Southern councils, and NRM for supporting that. So maybe see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks everyone.